All right, I think we might get started. So hello and welcome to the 2021 Audience Outlook Monitor webinar series, where today we'll be exploring the results and findings from the July phase 5 of the Audience Outlook Monitor research. And a big hello to all of those joining on Facebook. For the first time, we are also broadcasting live on Facebook. So if you're joining us from there, hello. My name is Lena Stein, and I'm a research associate at the Australia Council for the Arts. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm coming to you from the unceded lands of the Bidjigal people and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge the many nations throughout Australia that we're watching from, and to all First Nations people online and present here in this session. So firstly, thank you all for being here. Many of you will be familiar with the Audience Outlook Monitor research that our partners Patternmakers and Wolf Brown have been delivering here in Australia and internationally since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic around 18 months ago. At the moment, we're going through some of Australia's hardest moments throughout the entire pandemic right now. And we know that it's been so tough in certain states and territories. It's disappointing and frustrating, and the future of recent outbreaks continues to be uncertain. Whatever you're feeling right now is completely valid. It is so hard. And I also want to acknowledge all of the different situations that we're in at the moment. This is hard in so many different ways for everybody, and there is a diversity of experiences across the country at the moment. And while today isn't quite a COVID distraction, we're hoping that this session will be helpful and informative, an outlook of how your audiences are feeling, and also how committed they are to supporting you and the sector. So as I mentioned, today we'll be discussing the results from the July phase of the Audience Outlook Monitor, which is the 5th phase in this tracking study that began in the midst of the chaos that was March 2020. And we're continuing to track audience sentiment and engagement into 2021. And thank goodness we are. The Australia Council, along with state and territory jurisdictions, is so glad to be supporting this research as we collectively navigate a very rapidly changing time, as always, especially as the outlook across Australia is varied at the moment. It's lovely to see so many Outlook Monitor webinar regulars back, but regardless of whether you've attended every webinar or if this is your first, please do drop into the little chat window that we have on Zoom down the bottom, introduce yourselves, and tell us where you are today or share any thoughts or comments. Let's make this a really informal discussion and space. And with that, I'm very excited to welcome the host of today's webinar, Tandi Palmer Williams, Managing Director of Patternmakers, and welcome back as co-host, Andy Donovan, Director of Multi-Year Investment at the Australia Council. Before I hand over to Tandi and Andy, if you would like to ask a question at any stage of the discussion, please feel free to write it in the Q&A box that we have on Zoom just down the bottom there, and we'll get to as many as we can. I would also like to thank and welcome Elisa and Nicole, who are Auslan interpreting for us today. Now over to you, Tandi and Andy.
Thanks, Lena, and good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be connecting with you this morning, and I'm thrilled to be here with Andy and other colleagues to talk about the latest findings from the Audience Outlook Monitor. I'm zooming in from Bundjalung country this morning, and I'd like to add my acknowledgement of elders past and present and acknowledge any First Nations people with us today. So I'd love to know who is with us this morning, how you're feeling, how you're going. So please use the chat. I will be actively looking at the chat because I know I'm really feeling like I want to have some connection this morning, and it just makes for such a better session. So please do say hello, introduce yourselves and what country you're coming in from. Hi, Monica. Lovely for you to be here. Thank you so much for introducing yourself. And I hope we'll see some other names popping up on the chat soon. We've also got a couple of polls just to get a sense of where you're at this morning in regards to the current lockdowns and how you're kind of handling your work at the moment in terms of the format. So are you personally living in an area currently locked down, rescheduling events affected by lockdown, or potentially contingency planning for potential extensions of lockdowns or lockdowns that may arrive in the future? Great, we're hearing some more in the chat. Hi, Natalie. Hi, Debbie. Good to see you. Hi, Rachel. Thanks for introducing yourself. So if we can hear in the poll whether how you're affected by lockdowns and which of the following best describes your mode of work right now, whether you're physically open, connecting in person, or digitally distributing, connecting online, or both, or other. So yeah, as Lena said, we know that there's so many different experiences around the country right now. And from all of us at Patternmakers and Wolf Brown, we just wanted to send you our very best wishes as you navigate the seemingly endless changes that we are faced with on a personal and professional level. And yeah, we just want to acknowledge all of the incredibly difficult decisions and hard work happening right now. And if there's anything at all we can do to support you, whether that's through data from the Audience Outlook Monitor or something else, please don't hesitate to let us know. Here today, we're going to be talking about the latest results from audiences around the country, which were collected earlier this month. So if you can rewind a few weeks, take yourselves back to early July. So we collected the data, around the 7th of July for a few days. The survey was open and we asked people about the previous 2 weeks. So that would have been kind of the very beginning of July or the very end of June. So that was prior to, say, Melbourne's recent lockdown. But New South Wales had been announced extended restrictions, and there were several states either emerging from or going into a lockdown period. So it's a really changeable time, but we've got some findings from audiences in terms of how the lockdowns are affecting them and their decision making. And we asked them quite a range of questions about the next 12 months in terms of how they're thinking about making plans, what they'll be prioritizing, what they're doing online. And we're seeing some interesting kind of evolution in terms of how people are thinking about, which we're eager to take you through today. Thank you so much, everyone who's introducing yourselves. Hi, Chrissy. Hi, Dale. Lovely to see you. Simon, Anna, hello. Hi, Lucy. Or Lucy says she had to cancel her show mid-season and the national tour, pivot our winter and semester 2 workshop to online, and now facing date venue changes for the rest of our 21 season. Ugh. Well done on navigating all of that. My goodness. I'm sure you're not alone there. Thank you so much for sharing what's going on for you. Lena, if we can show the results of those polls now, and then we'll dive into the data. So, wow, okay, 60% of us are living in an area currently locked down. Another 30% are rescheduling events affected by lockdowns. Slightly more are contingency planning for the future. And then in terms of your mode of delivery, most of us, it probably follows, given the results about those affected by lockdown, are digitally distributing right now. Only 15% of us are physically open at present, I assume in a regional area or perhaps in one of the cities not affected by lockdown right now. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. So that gives us a little measure of what's happening for everyone. Yeah. So basically our results in July, we heard from almost 9,000 people across the country. As you know, this data is from a cross-sector collaborative survey involving around 130 organisations from all different parts of the arts and culture sector. If you're interested to know more about the methodology and how the data is collected, you can head to our website, and my lovely colleague Bianca is going to be popping into the chat and keeping an eye on things on Facebook as well if you're joining us on Facebook. So just let us know. Bianca will pop some links through to further reading throughout the conversation. But let's have a look at the snapshot for July. So it's unsurprising that we would have seen a bit of a setback. So around nationally, just over sort of half of all audiences, and those audiences are past attendees of our participating organisations. So around half were attending in early July. Obviously, with lockdowns affecting activity in several states, we're seeing a setback, particularly in the data in New South Wales, as you can see in that blue line. But data is showing that attendance is actually affected around the country. So when we look at people's risk tolerance, and that's kind of how they make decisions about whether they'll go out right now or not, we're seeing some slight changes in terms of risk tolerance as well. More people saying, you know, they're only going to go out when they're confident the risk is minimal. But we still have a big proportion who are saying they'll go out whenever they're permitted. So we're seeing over time, we're not returning to kind of the early stages of the pandemic when everyone was like much more cautious. We're actually seeing, although the outbreak situation is extremely serious, more people are kind of relying on what they're permitted to do, as opposed to kind of their personal stance and in terms of what they see to be the risks. So we can sort of feel confident that when restrictions do start to lift, we will see a majority of our audiences are eager to attend and be back out there. So I think have faith that people will come back. We are seeing confidence being affected, but have confidence that most people will be back in force as soon as they can. So in terms of how lockdowns are affecting us, we asked people a number of situations, and basically most people have been affected in some way in the past 4 months. So that 4-month period takes us back to around Easter. So since Easter, we know that at least, a majority in every state and territory have been affected. And you'll see on screen, I've put the results for each state just to show you that even states and territories that haven't experienced, an extended lockdown are still reporting high rates of being affected. And we know that, for instance, people in a regional area, although they're less likely to have had their plans be affected overall, they're more likely to say that their plans have been affected because an artist hasn't been able to travel to an event. So we know that lockdowns have a flow-on effect in terms of cancellations around the country. So it's certainly the case that what happens in one city affects us all, but we obviously need to look carefully for those of us who are in lockdown. The decisions are infinitely more difficult. So definitely thinking of everyone here today who's in that situation right now, and just dealing with the day by day, staying sane, staying safe, working through all the tricky things that we have going on at the moment in terms of vaccination. So when we ask people in terms of how they've been affected, what sort of action they've taken or what the situation's been, there's enormous amount of complexity in terms of how different events are being handled and what offers audiences are taking up. But we know that most people are looking to reschedule or rebook. Their desire to experience that event hasn't changed. So they're looking at rescheduling, or the event has been kind of automatically rescheduled. A smaller proportion have requested a refund, or we know some people have been automatically refunded. Around 1/5 say they've donated the value of unused tickets. And we know that many people who have been automatically refunded say they would have donated the value. So it's an interesting thing to think about if you're in that situation of cancelling an event, whether you would like to consider offering a pathway to donation at that time as well. It seems to be a pivotal moment for audiences where, people are disappointed that they won't experience the event, but overwhelmingly we see in audiences just an empathy with the artists and the teams affected. So people saying, yes, I was affected by this, but, we feel for those involved more. There are, of course, all manner of experiences in terms of lockdowns. So we asked people about, how is this experience? What has it meant for you in particular? And we know that some people have also potentially suffered a financial loss from the experience of a cancellation, not so much in the arts, but we know that, for instance, people's holiday plans, for instance, might have been affected by cancellations. And so they might have lost money in another sector, and so are feeling a bit affected by that as well. So basically we're hearing things like, obviously the thing we're all worried about is that people say things like, it discourages me from planning things ahead because it's stressful to rebook, or upsetting if the whole thing is cancelled. So planning ahead can actually be a bit emotional. I think we can all relate to that a little bit. Another person, this view kind of sums it up. So I've got to the point where you just roll with it. If something's cancelled or rescheduled, I just adjust it in my diary. I feel for the musicians and performers, though, it's not quite so easy for them, and it must be affecting both their mental health and bank balances. So I think the majority view is kind of philosophical in that people understand. They know that there's so much out of our control right now, and they're disappointed, but they are committed overall to the role of the arts in their lives, and they want to keep attending and will basically roll with the punches as long as it takes. So feel warm in the empathy that audiences feel for our situations right now. They're just as devastated as we are about all the cancellations that we're going through, and they will be back when they can. So in terms of the future, we are seeing a bit of a hit in terms of confidence. So people say that the risk of future lockdowns is the key barrier affecting their attendance, in the near future. Obviously, the risk of contracting or transmitting the virus is still up there as a key risk, but it's not the top risk for most people anymore. It's the risk of future lockdowns and cancellations that's the bigger inhibitor of attendance. Lots of people saying there's not as many options available. Some saying events are booking out too quickly, mostly in metropolitan areas, and others saying financial reasons. And there's a bunch of other reasons which you can read about in the National Snapshot report if you would like to. If you haven't digested that, it only takes about 15 minutes to read, and we'll have a little bit more detail on some of what we're discussing today. So the key thing we need to manage is obviously the risk of future lockdowns and cancelled events. So one of the things that's really become clear in terms of the qualitative data is although there's so much uncertainty and there's so much complexity in terms of how we need to handle each event, we know that communication is really powerful. So whatever the situation, audiences really appreciate clear, frequent, open communication, whatever the situation is. So clear communication can actually, even if the outcome isn't what the audience would have wanted in that situation or would have been their first preference, they really appreciate being kept informed. And I'll just show you a couple of the comments that have come through in the qualitative data, which shows basically, how a cancellation is handled is a really powerful moment in terms of our relationship with audiences. And it's very, very difficult, I know, but I just wanted to share with you these comments. So one person said, I'm still currently waiting on a refund from a Sydney event, which is cast out on a booking any event because of the hassles I'm experiencing. Conversely, if we can handle cancellations in as positive a way as we can, we have the opposite effect. So this person said they felt disappointed that they missed out on 3 events, but very impressed on how the venues handled it. Quick, clear communications, and where refunds were required, processed very efficiently. So the thing with communications appears to be the speed of communications, the clarity and transparency, and keeping where there's not an immediate kind of resolution or outcome, just keeping people up to date. So I know it's so complex. Here are my tips. Andy, I'd love to hear from you on this. What's your sense of what's working well and what isn't? And for those listening, please give your 2 cents worth. I'd love to hear what you found from those of you who are managing cancellations. Any tips you can share with your colleagues here with us today would be really welcome. Please don't hesitate to jump in if you've got something to add or build on this or an alternative view. But I think clear and frequent communications are the key to managing audience expectations, whatever the situation. And if we can, as much as possible, be transparent in terms of offering explanation for why it's being managed the way it is and kind of the benefits are for all involved. Audiences are very supportive of measures which ultimately benefit the artists. So if some of your decision making is to do with protecting artist incomes or an arrangement that is going to benefit the artistic team, please do let audiences know, because that's definitely something that audiences are very supportive of. Provide a pathway to donation if that's appropriate for you. So some audiences say they really want to donate at that moment, but there wasn't an option to. So if there is a pathway for you for that at that moment and you want to offer it or experiment with that, then there's certainly a case for that in the data. And if at all possible, aim for positive experiences. So we know that a bad experience can affect customer relationships long term. And so conversely, positive experiences really is a chance to really build goodwill. And I think, you know, we all need a bit of that in our lives at the moment, don't we? So Andy, what are your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Tandi. Hi, everyone. I'm coming to you from Gadigal country here in Sydney. I'm from the people of the Eora Nation, so I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging as well. Look, I think goodwill is the really important key here. I think there's still a great deal of goodwill from audiences. I think people are still you know, when they can be excited to be together and in a place, so in a theatre or in a venue or a gallery. So I think goodwill is the real key here, because people still want to go out and see things, and anything you can do in terms of communication to keep those channels going with audience members is really critical at this point. And I think my sense of it is that people from audiences are not getting upset with organisations when things have to change. That they understand the circumstances that we're all operating in, because they're experiencing those circumstances every day. So I think those 4 tips are really, really important. But I think the first one is probably the most important, which is about that communication. And it's I don't think you can sort of over communicate in a sense in this in the pandemic. I think it's really important just to keep people informed.
I think you're right, Andy. I don't think there is such a thing as over communication. And we know sometimes that audiences might miss something in their inbox. So even kind of following it up can't do it too much harm in that case. So I'd love to hear from those of us who are actually dealing with this on the ground. If you've got any experiences to share, I'd love to hear those in the chat. Please do share them. We're going to move on to, I guess, how this situation is looking for the next sort of few months through to the summer period and the next 12 months of attendances. So basically, people continue to buy tickets. So when we ask the proportion of people, are you making plans? Have you made plans, firm plans in the past 2 weeks? We're actually seeing pretty steady numbers compared to March. So despite the lockdowns, despite the uncertainty, people are continuing to make plans. What they're making plans for appears to be shifting slightly. So that's what we need to bear in mind. They continue to buy tickets. So you'll see that we've got the spending up on screen. So in the top row, you can see the July spending in terms of the proportion that's spent over $100 on the far right, or nothing on the left. And you'll see that over time since July last year, it's really been increasing. We've seen just a slight setback in terms of the big spending category, over $100 or over $50 in the last few months. So I think that sort of follows just that slight degree of caution in terms of people being a little bit more conscious about making those big plans, you know, traveling interstate, that kind of thing. So that's just something to bear in mind. But overall, the spending profile looks pretty robust. So I think whilst we're in lockdown, we are still eager to kind of look at what might be coming up. And we've got some data for you on the kind of ticket buying horizon. So for those of you who were in the March webinar where we looked at ticket buying horizon, you might remember that there was quite a trend towards last minute decisions. So people making decisions kind of in the days or a week, you know, 10 days in the lead up to an event. What we're seeing now is a little bit different. So basically people are tending to make plans now for what they hope will be the post-lockdown period. So you'll see we've got the ticket horizon by state here. Obviously, at the bottom in New South Wales, you'll see the proportion making plans for the next 7 days is quite small. That would be, I suspect, those in regional areas who aren't currently in lockdown. Other states, people are, so for instance, Canberra, Victoria at the time of data collection was not in lockdown. So that's where you'll see that trend. And so we're seeing people looking, more commonly looking kind of next month or the month after next, or kind of the summer period as a time schedule that they're making plans for right now. But we can expect the last minute trend to continue outside of lockdown, I think. So certainly in terms of the qual, we're seeing things like this. I have delayed purchasing tickets to live theatre productions due to lockdown and uncertainty around reopening. I decided not to travel interstate to see a live theatre production, but purchase tickets locally for a date next year when hopefully the situation will be more predictable. So a couple of ideas in this, obviously a pause in terms of making big future plans, for instance, interstate, but people looking to a future point where they hope the lockdown will be over, that they think it will go ahead. The other trend here, which we see in the qualitative data, is a trend for local events. I think people see local events as having a little bit less risk in terms of being affected by lockdowns, or particularly if the content is local or the artists are local, that it's more likely to go ahead. But local means different things to different people. So where we hear from regional audiences about local, it tends to be their town or their area, their region. In the cities, people mean their city generally. They're not often, sometimes they're talking about kind of their local suburb, but generally they think of, if they're a Sydney sider, they're thinking about Sydney as local. So I think that's an interesting thing just to be aware of in terms of people's future plans and decision making. I just wanted to go to the chat where we've had heard from Anna about Rising. So she said, we had a really robust customer service team handling refunds when Rising was cancelled, and open shared channels on Slack where we fielded new customer questions. Nice. So everyone, customer service and marketing comms, was across the same answers. I love that. It's awesome. And we have heard a couple of qual comments through from people affected by rising cancellations in the data, which Anna, I'm happy to share with you as well. I think the audience feedback on that has been really good. Obviously people that were devastated, but I think the customer experience was good from what we've seen. Jerry has said, having ticket exchange functionality available on our website has really saved us, to be honest, makes the load much more manageable. Yes. So yeah, it seems like there's no clear preference in terms of everyone wanting a refund or everyone wanting to reschedule. Of course, we see some people wanting a refund. Most people want to reschedule, but certain dates may not suit them. So it's a bit of it's complex, isn't it? So amazing where you can have that functionality on your website. Yes, I can imagine that leads to excellent customer experiences. Nice work. All right, so in terms of the next 12 months, we did ask audiences some questions about content, which we did do as well at the beginning of the pandemic in May 2020. So on the screen, you can see in the red, we've got the most recent results where we asked people about the year ahead. So I've called that FY 21-22. When we asked it last May, we asked it about that time. So overwhelmingly, people want to have the same kinds of events and experiences that they did before. So basically stay the course in terms of what you normally do. Audiences still love that. So overwhelmingly, that's true. However, in terms of some content things, we have noticed, although it's a minority, it's a growing minority who say they'll be more attracted to light-hearted things. So now about 1 in 3 say they'll be more attracted to light-hearted things in the next 12 months. And then the proportion that say they want to engage with works that help make sense of the pandemic has dropped slightly. So our interpretation of this is that first and foremost, audiences love the art forms that they engage with, and they want to continue experiencing all the work that their favorite artists and companies make. So don't question kind of what you do too much. I think what people are hungry for is experiences that are light-hearted. They could potentially be fun. They might be really connective in terms of bringing us together. They might be inspiring. I think what my interpretation of this is that potentially the more challenging and serious works in our programs need to be positioned strategically, and we can think about, how to bring out the potential other angles of an event, for instance, making it a great fabulous experience, or a chance to reconnect with other people who love that particular type of work, or work from that producer. So I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. For those who are in programming, I'd love to hear how you're thinking about bringing the fun for those that want it, but delivering on the need for people to have what they had in the past, and help people have serious works in a strategic programming, in a curatorial process. So I'd love to hear your take on that if you're in programming right now. I know I personally would like a little bit more fun in my life right now, and I'd love to hear if I'm alone in that, or are you with me? What do you think, Andy?
I don't think you're alone in that. I think I think a lot of people are looking for something that's a little, I guess, sort of to take their minds off what's going on a bit, and take them away a little bit from it. I think that stat on the works that helped me make sense of the pandemic is really interesting. I think people are probably a little bit tired of talking about the pandemic at the moment, and want to see something that something is a little bit different.
Yes.
I think all of the last few slides really show some of the challenges, I think, for people in programming around volatility, both in terms of box office sales, and sort of the difficulty people are having with planning and making decisions around buying tickets and when they're going. And that's certainly being reflected in some of the information we're seeing from organisations too, particularly the single sales tickets. And then in terms of the programming, and I guess it's that there's that core of your audience that wants to see the work that they know and expect to see from a particular organisation. And then there's, I guess, the issue of audience development, and that's where that balance, I suppose, of trying to get people in who may be looking more for those lighthearted experiences into the venues is a bit of a balancing act, I suppose. I mean, this whole thing really is a balancing act in terms of all of those kind of variables that everyone's facing. So I think it's just that it's the volatility, but it is pleasing to see the slide that that people are planning, are still thinking about planning ahead and thinking about the future. I guess their difficulty is predicting when things will settle down a bit.
Absolutely, yes. So much uncertainty, but I think it is a vote of confidence from audiences that we've seen this phase, in terms of, some people say that the pandemic has really, reaffirmed the value of arts and culture experiences in their lives. It's made them appreciate it so much more. I think we sort of took it a lot for granted, didn't we, before? And so a lot of people saying things like they want to make up for lost time, or make sure that they are balancing out all the kind of serious things going on in their lives with joyful experiences.
I think that's right, and I mean the sense of excitement was really palpable after the first series of lockdowns, sort of last year, when theatres did open up again, venues opened up again. That sense of excitement of people being able to go out and be together was absolutely palpable. So I don't think that's going away. It's just dealing with the uncertainty of when people can get together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know in March we were kind of flabbergasted to see such strong attendance figures. And I know I've heard from some colleagues in the sector that certain things have been selling prior to this recent round of outbreaks really well. So I think where conditions do permit, we're going to see a little bit of a resurgence. Obviously, we're all conscious now that things can change at any time. So I do have a couple of ideas about that in a moment, which I'll share with you. I just wanted to, before I do, share some practical tips, and I'd love to hear from you if you have suggestions on how to kind of wrangle all of these programming challenges. Basically, we asked people, in terms of your spending in the next 12 months, do you think it will be the same or higher or lower than it was prior to the pandemic? And an increasing number now say that they think it'll be the same or higher than they did before. So there's some really quite positive stats here in terms of people wanting to spend their cultural budget. Obviously, so much uncertainty remains in terms of what events will actually go ahead, what will be viable in the current context with the restrictions that we may or may not have in place. So while much uncertainty remains in terms of the volume and the variety of events that we'll have in the market, audiences want to spend. The majority of them say they want to spend as they did in the past, or even make up for that lost time. So I think there's some good signs there. I will also just touch on regional audiences, because at this point in time, they are a little bit different to metro audiences. They are more comfortable. So I'll just read down the list. I've got some dot points here. Sorry. They're more likely to have participated in a cultural activity recently. Obviously, they're less likely to have been affected by lockdowns. But as I mentioned just earlier, if they are affected, it's most likely because an artist couldn't make it, or the event had to be cancelled for some reason. They are more comfortable at most types of venues right now. And so there's potentially some good signs in terms of audience confidence in regional areas. They are slightly more likely to say they'll be more attracted to lighthearted things. They're more likely to be accessing digital experiences with other members of their household. So we won't have time to deep dive into digital today, but there are some really interesting insights in the National Snapshot if that's you. And in terms of, it doesn't have it on here, but yes, regional audiences are more likely to say, oh, here we go, that they won't attend as much as they used to because there aren't as many options available. So in terms of building regional attendance, we think there's room for volume. Basically, the main thing that's inhibiting attendance in the regional areas right now is obviously the risk of future lockdowns potentially affecting events, but also simply the quantity of events that are available, because artists are affected by lockdowns in cities. A lot of events are being cancelled. So for those in regional areas, I think there is definitely a case to see some more events pushing ahead. Interesting, we've heard from Monica. Thanks for sharing, Monica. They have said they've centrally programmed a large community gala in October, side by side with the MSO Orchestra and Chorus. Relentless optimism. Yes, quite a lot of new work and some standard classics, some film, immersive visual art, electronic music space, some cabaret, some tango, meant to be regenerative and uplifting without being flippant or superficial. That feels right. I like that, regenerative and uplifting. Excellent. So thanks so much for sharing, Monica. I think there's some interesting things that we see in terms of the themes. I've mentioned this before, but if you are looking at programming right now, we did ask audiences a little while back about the roles for arts and culture post-pandemic, and I'll just touch on those themes again because we see them coming through in the data again. People are interested for arts and culture experiences to help reanimate public places, bring people together. We all need that, and are realizing the importance of social connection in our lives. Escapism, healing, transformation. So we know that some of the big social, environmental issues of our time are still really top of mind for people, or in fact, becoming kind of more acute and urgent in people's minds. And people have really been reflecting on how they live in line with their values, how they can make more of a difference for the issues they care about. So definitely, whilst I think people are cautious about works that help make sense of the pandemic, I don't think it's a need to shy away from serious topics. I think in fact people do want those, but they just want to feel uplifted and inspired. So I love, Monica, that you've used the words regenerative and uplifting. I think that's a nice way to go about it. And remodeling the way arts and culture works. So I thought I'd just share those again. But in terms of planning programs, here are my probably highly obvious tips. Andy, I'd love to hear if you have something to add to this, or perhaps offer an alternative view. So anticipate last minute bookings and work through what this means for programming and marketing. Balance your investment in major events and local small scale events that have fewer risks for all involved. Obviously, getting that balance right is different for everyone. Look at ways to spark joy and create experiences that are lighthearted, or I'm going to use my new favorite word, uplifting instead of lighthearted, inspiring, fun, and all connective, even when the content is serious. and consider what it means for you to be more nimble, responsive and ready for changes at any time. So I think there's kind of, I know in our team, we're thinking about, you know, this isn't potentially going to be the last lockdown or the last time things have been rescheduled or cancelled. What capacities do we need to look at in ourselves and in our teams to roll with this, you know, as long as it goes on, kind of thing. So I think there's some interesting conversations being had around the sector in terms of how we look after one another, how we adapt to new ways of working, what it means for programming. So for instance, shifts away from annual programs towards seasonal or 3 months or rolling programs. I know some people are planning. So I think it's worth taking the time out to consider what it means for you and your colleagues, your artists, your teams, long term for us to survive and keep going. Andy, what do you think?
Thanks, Tandi. Yeah, look, I think there's a great connection between tip 1 and 4 and tip 2 and 3. So 1 and 4, I think the last minute bookings, I think some of the information I'm hearing is that they're really different from what they were before COVID, and really unpredictable. And so I think it's really important to be nimble in terms of marketing and really sort of think through what extra you can do to actually push those last minute bookings, because they won't necessarily come through in the way they may have done prior to the pandemic. And as we've spoken about, there's a whole lot of reasons for that. And so that's where I guess the nimble and responsive comes in terms of what things you might be able to do a bit differently to get those sales happening through last minute bookings. And then I guess we come back to that word about balance in terms of the sorts of works being presented and balancing between the types of events and the types of content, I suppose, that are being presented as well. But I do like that idea that content can be serious but still be uplifting or lighthearted. I think that's absolutely true, and I think people are still expecting to see the big debates happening in the work that's presented about contemporary issues, but also want to see, I suppose, those issues represented in a way that is perhaps a bit more lighthearted than we have done in the past.
Thanks, Andy. Well, also interested to see Monica's comment earlier that they hired 90% Victorian artists to be on the safe side. I'd be interested to hear from anyone else who's adopting that approach. Yes,
I think that's going to be happening a lot, and I think we're seeing certainly that through touring, there's a whole bunch of disruption to touring happening at the moment now, because and I think there was a comment too about the Darwin Festival earlier as well, in terms of the challenges they're facing with artists coming from interstate. And obviously the lockdowns don't affect just where people can go, it affects how you can travel between states, and sort of artistic teams, creative teams are being disrupted through all of this as well. So there certainly is that, I think, a bit of a sense of wanting to cast and source creatives locally for productions and for works, because it's seen as mitigating that risk of lockdown, really. Yeah.
All right, we're coming up to 12:45. I do have a couple more slides, so if you have to leave us, goodbye and thank you, and have a really lovely day. It's been so nice to have you here. If you can stay a couple more minutes, please do. I've got some slides just about the outlook in terms of vaccination and COVID safety, so we know what to expect in the coming months. So basically, in terms of the outlook, obviously everyone is waiting for vaccination. I think overwhelmingly arts audiences are confident in vaccination compared to the national population. They are getting vaccinated faster for their age categories than the averages Australia-wide. So we can expect to achieve large proportions of our audience to be vaccinated sooner than the rest of the population. What that means for us in terms of attendances is yet to be seen, in terms of whether we'll see something like a vaccination passport like they're trialling in some other countries. We don't know yet. There's so many issues around vaccination that we won't talk about today. But just know that I think most audiences are going to be vaccinated as soon as they can, if they're not already. And largely audiences are confident that vaccination will be successful in leading to the resumption of normal activity. So confidence is very slightly down on that since March, but overall, most people are at least somewhat confident in that. In the meantime, while we wait for that vaccination, COVID safety continues to be important. And I know that some of the restrictions that we're living with are incredibly difficult in terms of viability. But it looks like from an audience perspective, people are still relying on COVID safe arrangements to attend. So basically, in terms of which ones they find the most encouraging, check-in is really key. So having your processes to make sure everyone checks in. Ventilation, since the Delta strain, ventilation has obviously become a bigger issue, and we know where that audiences feel confident that ventilation is working well. So they want to see things like improving ventilation systems. Where it comes to social distancing, people tend to conceptualize a percentage capacity as opposed to a square meters capacity. People feel slightly more neutral about the square meters, but the key thing is that for some people, they feel like it's not implemented once you're inside. So I think where possible, if we can continue finding ways for those who want it to ensure that distancing can be practically achieved in our venues, it's really worth doing, obviously to make people feel safe in the moment. That then helps their confidence to book again. And ensures that the risk of transmission happening at a cultural venue is also kept really low. So I know it's incredibly difficult, but all of these things we need to kind of stay the course on for the moment. In terms of venue preferences, basically when we asked people this time to think ahead to the summer period, we hear about weather in terms of how we ask about this, but whether they prefer an indoor or an outdoor venue, people would opt for fixed seating if they have the choice. So if that's appropriate for your event, have a think about fixed seating if you're not already. And we know that seating in terms of providing access is also really important for those who experience physical access needs. Basically, in terms of, packed events, many of audiences miss those shoulder-to-shoulder events, but unfortunately see the reality of needing social distancing to remain in place for now. So for instance, one person said, as a theatre maker themselves, they completely understand how much we're all relying on achieving 100% capacity again, but we aren't ready to go and sit next to each other. We need to return to having a spare seat between each group in the theatre. We need some space. So this is obviously different depending on what part of the sector you're in, and very challenging in certain parts of the sector like contemporary music to have social distancing. So I completely empathise with everything you're going through and doing what's right for you and your particular audience. So in terms of some tips for COVID safe experiences, thanking your teams for staying vigilant. They are literally doing an incredible job, and we continue to get such good feedback from audiences at events in terms of how COVID safety is being managed and how safe people feel at arts events relative to other places. And I think we see that in terms of exposure sites around the country. Everyone is doing an amazing, amazing job, and it must be so hard to keep going. So please thank your teams for all of the work that they're doing. Reviewing ventilation, if that's relevant for you, and allocating seating. I think following through as much as we can inside our venues to ensure that meaningful social distancing can be achieved. And a thing we hear a lot about is communicating COVID safe measures. Audiences love to know in advance what's going to be expected, what the certain measures actually mean, what they mean in practice, how it will change the experience, what to expect, just a reminder on kind of how it's going to work so people can feel prepared feel safe, feel held, you know what I mean? They kind of need as much kind of communication and support as we can offer right now in terms of building that confidence. And we know that every good experience leads to the confidence to book again. So thank you so much for all your work on COVID safety. We'll leave it there. I don't know if we've got any questions that we haven't tackled yet, but please do get in touch if there's anything we can help you with. All of the data is available in the dashboard. If you have any questions about how to filter to get what you need, please drop Bianca a line, my colleague Bianca, who's project manager for the Audience Outlook Monitor. And we can even do things like adding new filters. If there's a specific art form that you're interested in or something that you're having trouble with, just let us know. And we'll also be coming out with a webinar program for the rest of the year in the next little while. So keep an eye out for that. Andy, any final thoughts before I throw back to Lena?
No, look, I mean, that last set of slides was very similar to what we were looking at when we last did this. So I think those things remain the same and will be the same probably for the foreseeable future. I think that evidence and people feeling COVID safe when they're in spaces is going to be a critical thing going forward.
I think so. I think the situation, particularly with the Delta strain having slightly different kind of attributes, I think we need to really stay vigilant and put safety of ourselves, our staff, our artists and our audiences first. And yeah, keep doing the amazing work that you're all doing to keep the wheels turning. I know audiences just overwhelmingly want this in their lives. So thank you so much for coming to get an update on the data and stay in touch with your audiences. I think communication is the big thing for me that's come out of this round. So keep at it. Thank you, everyone. And I'll throw back to Lena now if you have anything to close with, Lena.
Thanks, Tandi and Andy, and to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and being part of the conversation. As always, a recording of this webinar will be up on the Australia Council website in the next few days. And as Tandi mentioned, further fact sheets and webinars on different Audience Outlook Monitor topics will be coming up in the next few months. Yeah, these are scheduled to continue being on the last Tuesday of each month, and the topics for the rest of the year will be available soon. So thank you again for joining us. I hope you have a good rest of the day wherever you are, and we'll see you again in August. Bye.
Thank you. See
Bye,
you.
everyone.